Greetings to all the intelligent beasts out there. On this episode of Beasts with Brains podcast, we talk to the first woman to ever win 4 consecutive college national titles, a 2-time junior world champion, 3-time Pan American champion. It is Victoria Anthony, aka Victoria Vortex on Instagram. She spent 10 years with the U.S. national wrestling team and has so much wisdom from an athletic standpoint on this podcast, but we also dive deep into her spiritual journey with alternative medicine. Hello, everyone. Today, I am so honored to be joined by Judo black belt and a trailblazer in women's wrestling, Victoria Vortex Anthony. I'm so excited to finally have this conversation with you because your career is so amazing. You're so inspiring, but then you're also on this like spiritual journey that you also share with people that I feel like is very different for considering like a classic wrestler. So you really embody so many different aspects of the sports and spiritual world that I can't wait to dive into. But first I want to talk about your parents because they seem like such great characters. Your dad was the one who got you into judo when you were 6 years old, and your mom is just her own person. So how do you think that they kind of made your personality the way it is today?
Yes, that's such a good question. Yeah, so they are such characters in and of each of themselves. So my mom, I would say, my mom's from New Orleans, and she's just like loud, like so much personality, and she just goes her own way in life, and she's always done that, and I've always had that with her as an example. So I think that has helped me just like step into spaces that I honestly was scared or nervous or like uncomfortable stepping into, like a boys wrestling team and then into the world of MMA after. But just seeing like how she maneuvers the world, it's just like she just gets in there. So yeah, I feel like I have that in my spirit because of her. And then my dad, he was doing martial arts all throughout my childhood. And he was doing judo when I was 6 years old. And I would have to go watch him practice anyway. And I was like, okay, if I have to be here watching, I want to get on the mat. And I'm so grateful to 6-year-old me. I feel like she had the full vision because I was too young to start doing judo at the time. Like I think you have to be 7 or 6.5, something like that. My dad was just telling me this story last week. He was like, you were so obnoxious. You would annoy me at home. You would annoy me in the car ride and just beg to get on the mat. And the sensei said no, like repeatedly, like, no, she's too young. And then finally he was like, she's annoying me so much, like, please, like, so she'll stop, let her get on the mat. So yeah, I'm just so grateful to that little me because that's how, I feel like the whole plan has come from that.
And did your sisters come with you, or did your dad just take you to judo?
My older sister was doing it at the time, so he had a rule that if you did a sport, I think you had to do it for 6 months or something. So she was just like running that clock out because I don't think she loved judo. But so she was doing it, and my younger sister wasn't born yet. So Danny was on the mat, and then from there. And my dad said I just got crazy, like out the gates. I don't remember any of that, but he said like, immediately he was like, what is wrong with this girl? She cares so much about practice. She just wants to do this. So
and from the get-go, it was, jumping into the practice, then competitions, and then you're 14 years old really competing for high stakes attacks and get a crazy injury to your wrist.
Yes.
That kind of pushed you into the high school wrestling scene, which I think is so crazy that you had the experience of, okay, you don't want to commit this social suicide of joining the boys wrestling team, but hey, there's these 2 girls on the team, let's at least connect with them and see how this goes. And then you get bullied by one of the girls. And it obviously, like the way you described the story to me, it seemed like a moment of like jealousy or threat that you were now the new girl on the team. So can you tell me about that experience and like the surprise of like, oh, the one girl on the team you would think would be nice to you is being a complete bully?
Yes, exactly. So I joined the boys wrestling team. I break my wrist at Judo Nationals when I'm 13. Just like posted, don't ever let your hand slip off the gi and go onto the mat because that's not my wrist. But that was like the divine intervention to move me towards wrestling. And I didn't want to join the boys team. Like you said, I was just like, this is social suicide, and I'm already, I wasn't that confident in myself, like as a 13, 14-year-old girl. I felt like I was always just like a little bit uncomfortable in social settings. I was like, well, this is way worse to join the boys wrestling team. Now I don't fit in at the high school, and now I definitely don't fit on the boys team. But there were 2 girls that were on the team, and this one girl, Desiree, I guess I told you my mom is like, she's my mom. She was like a crosswalk guide for the high school, and her and this girl got into it. because I guess the girl wasn't following the rules. I don't know. But then this girl ends up being on my wrestling team, and I'm thinking she's gonna be like, okay, we're the only girls on the team. One day she shoves me up against the locker and is like, "You're a slut. Like, you're here for attention." Like, all that type of thing. And I'm literally so confused. I'm like, I think I had only kissed a boy at that time, so I'm like, I don't know where she got that. But it was like that. It was territorial, basically. And she was like, "This is my team, and you're coming in for the wrong reasons, even though we've never met before." And that was my introduction to wrestling. And I was like, this sucks.
And was there someone else on the team that was kind of like a nice outlet for you, or was it just the passion that you had for wrestling that was like, all right, I'm going to keep going and keep toughing it out?
For sure. My high school coach named Dennis Ferramo, shout out Coach Dennis, he got me into the sport by doing a demonstration that I saw in my PE class, and then I was like, okay, I'll join because it looks like judo. But
And you can get out of PE.
Yes, and I can get out of PE. I hated PE. You're so good. Yeah, I absolutely hated PE. So I was like, okay, this is the only sport in high school I can play. I don't know how to play basketball or like any of that, and I don't like being on teams really. So I'll join. But Coach Dennis, he treated me like the rest of the team, and I grew close to him over the years. He's still one of my close friends and like, a mentor in the space. Yeah, I love him. But otherwise, and then just like the high school boy freshmen, like we grew closer because wrestling just brings you close together. It's so difficult. Those are still some of the hardest practices I've ever done in my life. Like 3 hours, as soon as you finish school, put your running shoes on, go run however many miles around the school, then into the wrestling room for like the most treacherous wrestling practices, and then weight training on top of it. But I grew closer to those boys over that period of time because of what we were going through.
I'm sure a lot of them like are like, oh yeah, I used to train with her in high school. Like they look at you now. But at that point, where were you in your judo journey? Like, could you have already been a black belt under 18 or?
Yeah, you can. So that's a good question. So I stopped doing judo because of the injury, and then I joined the wrestling team, and then I basically didn't go onto a mat for like a year and a half, and then I went back to judo because I kind of just left it like out of nowhere. I was like, that was my whole life plan. I wanted to go to the Olympics. Then I started wrestling, and that summer was at Fargo Nationals, like the biggest national tournament in wrestling for that age group, and then boom, 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 just kept going from there. And I was like, oh, well, I forgot about judo. Let's go try it. Because I was just starting to be able to compete at the senior level, and everything was junior before that because I was that age group. And then I went and did like a senior tournament in Texas, my first one, and I did well. Like I took second and lost to like a high level black belt, and I was like, this isn't as fun as it used to be because wrestling is so much more fast paced, and the level of intensity for me is higher, and it's just like more engaging. And like I've told you, like I'm diagnosed ADHD, and I think my brain just latches on to stimulus. So for me, I think wrestling was honestly just more stimulating. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop doing judo and just go 100% with wrestling.
And when you were more focused on judo, I think it's so cool that you would go with Ronda Rousey to judo seminars. I mean, that's crazy. So before she was super, super big, you kind of knew her.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
Yeah, that's funny too because my mom was in the story. So I was like, I don't even know how old, young. And judo's so small in the U.S. in total, but in California too. So my mom would bring me up to her house, and then her mom would drive us up to San Jose for just like the judo training camps. And there was a tournament setting, but it was cool. It's great to know the Rousey family. Like Anne-Marie, Ronda's mom, is like just amazing, and they've both always been an inspiration. Anne-Marie might be the first world champion for the U.S. in judo. If not, there's some stat like that about her, and she's just like so intense but so awesome, and I really remember her as a big figure during my childhood in judo. But my mom took myself, Ronda, and I think another girl to a tournament at one point. This is in Ronda's book. I don't even know that this happened until I read her book. She was like, Miss Anthony is black and I'm white, and her mom couldn't take her, and she had like jumped a fence the day before, so she had rolled her ankle, and we got to the registration desk, and she was like, where's her parent? Like, she needs a parent here to sign for this. And Ronda was like, thank God, because she didn't want to tell her mom she rolled her ankle. And then my mom steps in, and she's like, you think I'm not her guardian? She's like, obviously not her guardian. And Ronda ends up competing, but yeah, overall, it's just like those are good memories from my childhood.
I love that. And I love in one interview you said, my mom gets what she wants and she's outspoken.
Yes,
and
that's
like
right. I was like, how do I describe her?
Yeah, and I feel like that's so important to have in a female energy, because sometimes it's so easy to sit back and just take what people say to you. But how would you describe yourself? Do you feel like you're like outspoken, or do you kind of like let things roll off your back? Like, how would you see yourself in that lens?
I would say I'm definitely both, because I have no problem with conflict, or like when something needs to be said, I'm gonna say it. But I do basically weigh risk versus reward, and if it's not worth the time or the energy, then I don't. It's not like I've really had trained myself over the years, and I'm still working on it to respond and not react and be intentional, and just again measure, like, is this, all things considered, is this even worth it for myself and the other person, or is it just going to create a situation we don't need in the first place? Yeah, but I'd say because of my mom, and like Louisiana culture, New Orleans culture is very outspoken. Like, people tell the truth and are very honest, and can be in your face. So I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Especially growing up in Southern California, I feel like it's definitely
Relax,
more.
yeah. And my dad is like a pacifist for sure. Really? Although if something needs to be said, he'll say it too. But they're an interesting balance to have as parents, because he's more, I would say, more laid back and relaxed.
What was his career? Because it wasn't as a martial artist. That was his.
No, he worked for Chevron for, I don't know, like 56 years or something. I don't know, maybe that's too long, but something, a long ass time. Yeah. And like, bless my dad so much, because he worked at Chevron in El Segundo, and we lived in Huntington Beach. So he would wake up at 4 a.m, drive however long in traffic to work, drive backwards in California traffic like an hour and a half, and my little ass is at the front door, like tapping my toe with my gi on, waiting for him to drive me back an hour the other direction to this place I was doing judo, Harbor Judo. So my dad is such a massive part of my career. Both my parents, I just had like so much gratitude, because for one, they dealt with me, because I was like, whoo, like I was just a crazy little kid. And two, they transported me everywhere, and they were so supportive. They still are. Thank you, Mom and Dad.
You're the superstar of the family, though. I mean, the accolades that you have in the wrestling world, you're such a trailblazer. And then now you're looking to take it into MMA, but there's not an atomweight division in the UFC. They have one with one championship. But in October, Dana White said that the level of talent is really growing, and that they might just have to add another division. So when you heard that little soundbite, what was your reaction?
Basically, yes. So I was so happy. In my mind, I'm like, I may as well. What else am I doing besides like trying to manifest an atomweight division? Because that's where I not only fit best, but MMA is dangerous. So what happened in wrestling, I competed at 105 pounds at the 48 kilo weight division. And then they bumped it up out of nowhere in 2017 to 110 pounds. And for me, like at the lowest weight class, that's a high percentage of our body weight. So I was like, this sucks. Like 105 was good for me. I had to actually put weight on to get big enough for 105. Like right now I'm 4'10" and I walk at 115. And that's after like packing muscle onto my body on purpose for a 2 year.
You pack on a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, girl.
Yeah, it's a lot of work though to get that going. I worked with a specific lifting coach. There were seasons where we were lifting twice a day just to get me up to size. And then they moved the marker again, which that is what it is. But to have an atom weight in MMA, like reach is important. Reach is important in wrestling. And then just the weight cutting. So wrestling, you weigh in the morning, but obviously MMA, it's the day before or even like 36 hours before. So a girl that is fighting 115 maybe is 140 dropping down, or even heavier for sure. There's some girls that, sit at the 135 mark, but they can get a lot heavier too. My body just is not that frame. So all that said, like it's really important for me that this happens either in PFL or the UFC. One is an option, but I would like to do this on my home soil. And yeah, that's a big part of what I want to happen in my MMA career. I mean, Ronda is a great example of, they said that women would never compete in the UFC, and now like slowly talking more and more about atom weight as they grab from South America and from Asia. So yeah, when Dana said that, I was like, yes, this is what I consciously try to manifest every day. And
if anyone's gonna manifest an atom weight division, it's definitely you. Like, I feel like everything you do, you speak with such intentionality, and you just speaking your reality. I'm so excited to see the day. Like 2025, I feel like is going to be the big year, obviously, for grappling, but I really feel like that atom weight division, there's so much talent that needs to be seen.
Yeah, it's coming for sure. And then for myself too, like basically my personal plan was to get really good at MMA, have fights that I finish, and then start to be able to talk and make noise and like call at Dana and the UFC to add an atom weight, which I'm grateful it's happening on its own, you know, with those 2 fights that just happened. There was Juliana Martinez, I think, that had a great showing on Dana White Contender Series, and then the other girl that was on the Asian series. But yeah, I tore my ACL like 13 months ago, so my whole plan shifted. But I agree, like this next year for myself, I'll be able to get, you know, 3 to 4 fights, hopefully finish them all. And they need people to build the division around, basically. They need talent, they need people that are marketable. So I plan to be that person.
Yes, and you stay on top of the social media stuff too. Yeah. I know maybe that probably was really pushed when you were dealing with injuries and stuff, but now I feel like you're the top person that people go to, man or woman, for technique.
Yes.
You have the Technique Tuesday, you're thinking about doing a subscription list on Instagram as well. So what has that been like, kind of taking the avenue of a content creator and, you know, really honing in on your skills as a wrestler?
As you know, it's a full-time job. Yeah, it's content creation. I'm finally getting systematic now, more systematic than ever before, I suppose, with just my approach to content creation. And I've always taken it seriously. Like, I always make time for it. I'm always that girl after practice. It's like, let's get a pic, because this is just as important, especially in MMA, as everything else. But still, wrestling, Jiu Jitsu, like if you want to make money in these sports, I would encourage anyone to work on building their platform, because then you have something to leverage. And I'm so grateful that 10 years ago, I think a little over 10 years ago, I started my Instagram, and it took me the first 8 years to get to over 100K. Like, I think the first 8 years I was at like 30, up to 30K, and then in 1 year I went from 30 to 100, over 100. But my capacity to use that every day for something, like getting sponsors, getting all of the things that come with social media, but it definitely is something you have to take seriously. But any grappler, like any wrestler, I just hate seeing people not get paid for doing the hardest sports in the world too. And there's so much that comes from taking your platform seriously.
Yeah, it definitely is so valuable. I know that jiu-jitsu isn't your sport, but I feel like you're so like accepted into our community of it.
So cute. Yeah,
it's so amazing. Like when I tagged you in the J-Flow Judo thing, I'm like, I know it would be more jiu-jitsu when jiu-jitsu is not as much your thing, but I was like, you're just so part of the community. You're the first person that comes into mind.
Thank you so much. That was the coolest thing ever for me. So I did ADCC trials 2 years ago. I don't even know what ADCC trials are at this point. First of all, I kept calling it ADCCs. I didn't know it was a trials. I posted a picture in gi pants, so my friends Kendall Roosing and Mason Fowler both separately were like, you should do this tournament because the rule set's really good for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys, I don't know any jiu-jitsu. Like, I don't know how to, I don't think that's a good idea. And they're like, no, we'll tell you how to like maneuver the rules, whatever. I post a picture in gi pants on my Instagram, not knowing it's a no-gi event. I'm like, should I do ADCCs? Like, I happened to be, there was someone teaching gi jiu-jitsu in my apartment complex. So anyway, I have no fucking clue what's going on. And I end up doing that tournament, but people were coming up to me, like black belts, like people that are known in the jiu-jitsu community, to shake my hand and be like, we learned so much from your Instagram. Like, I've never felt like more loved and accepted than I did that day at that tournament. I mean, and it's continued from there, but I was like, oh, I like it over here. The jiu-jitsu community is so sweet and just so welcoming, and just the way that everybody interacts on the mats is so sweet, I find. Like, I like this community a lot.
Yeah, and I definitely know you're going to be getting a lot of love this weekend. We're at Nogi World, so she's here to support some people. I do want to bring up one of the quotes that I thought was really, really sweet, that you said, that's one thing that I love about women's wrestling and wrestlers. There is no girl in the sport that doesn't have their own story about maneuvering their own path, because there was no path.
Yeah.
So what do you view is going to be changing and evolving with women's wrestling in particular?
Yeah, the addition of women's wrestling into the D1 wrestling world is huge. So now Iowa has a team, and I believe like 1 or 2 more teams are getting added in this season or next season, and that changes everything. First of all, the fact that it's sanctioned, I think in 48 states out of 50. When I was wrestling, I don't know how many states had sanctioned high school championships, but California did not have one at the time. So when I say there was no path, there was like literally no path. Like, someone just made a state championships for me to compete in, but it wasn't sanctioned by the state. It wasn't, a CIF California event. And now that these pathways have been carved, which I was a part of, but the women before me were way more on the ground level, like not accepted, just hearing her, honestly, just terrible stories. One woman, she said she joined a D1 men's team and they would like pee in her shoes. They just didn't want her there. Like, just like,
wow.
go. And you're dealing with like boys, really 18-year-old, 19-year-old boys. So they had to deal with way worse. And then I didn't really have to deal with anything particularly bad. There just wasn't a path really. But yeah, now the girls, it's so amazing to see the level of acceptance, number one, because I feel like that's a lot what my generation was fighting for, is just to be accepted, like, as wrestlers. Yes, and technically, like, not just being like, oh, the girls are on, let's either talk shit about it or leave, which is one of the reasons I love competing in Russia, because I just felt so accepted as a grappler there, like so loved and appreciated for my technical aspect, that for me is like one of the most fun parts of these sports, is just learning the technique and being, especially wrestling and coming from judo, being able to execute high level, like high amplitude maneuvers. And in Russia, it was so appreciated. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. People are sitting here in the quarterfinals or like the first round of the tournament and they're cheering for me. Yes. I would love to, if I could ever compete in Russia again in wrestling, I would love to. But yeah, back to the question. The girls now, I'm so happy for them, because I just see it on like Flow Wrestling Instagram, and the amount of support that they get is amazing. Like, it's so good to see, and it'll just keep growing from here. And now that it's sanctioned in almost all states, girls have girls teams to go to. So I see it all the time. Like, John Anik just posted about his daughter joining the wrestling team. And yeah, so cute. But I think like your friend's doing it, so you join, and that just didn't exist for me personally. And now I can see how this will just continue to blow up year after year.
I love that. Yeah. And I went to Kazakhstan recently. If they're going to have $1 million tournament, they had Javier Mendez as special guest. They would probably love to have you as well.
So I'm
here. And they would love to learn some of your wrestling too. They're obviously huge fans of that as well. But I know that with judo and wrestling, a big part of it is just that being grounded and being able to use your body and momentum.
Yep.
And I feel like that almost kind of goes hand in hand with your meditation practice and also your curiosity for alternative medicines and kind of getting grounded into like planet Earth.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
And for so long, I was just so enamored by you for being so open about your journey, and you're friends with Rashad, and they have interviewed you on their Umbo podcast. So I was like really happy to know that you're open to speaking about these experiences. Yes. So first, I know that the original experience was when you were 18 and you had your first psilocybin trip. So can you kind of tell me about how that experience changed you?
Yes, definitely. So I had basically been like looking into spirituality, I guess, or just trying to understand the world that I live in, both in my physical body as a human being and like all of the things that we have going on in our brains and the world around me. That just was always something I was like, what is going on here? And I picked up a book on Buddhism, and that was probably my first entry into just like trying to understand the world. And then not too long after, I had my first psilocybin trip, and that I feel like blew open the doors and allowed me to have the physical experience of what I was learning about Buddhism and just what is true in the world, what this reality really is. And I'm so grateful for that first trip, because to this day it's one of the best trips I've ever had. And I took like just the right dose, which since then I've gone so deep into plant medicine. And one of the things that I really harp on is safety and people just approaching consciously and with intention. And so taking the right dose is really important, so you don't blow past the state of consciousness that you can basically hold at that time, because it's going to open you up and expand you. But can you re-assimilate that experience into your day-to-day life moving forward? Are you able to actually integrate that? And I just got lucky on that first trip, because I mean, my friends were there to guide me, but we're all 18, and they're like, okay, I think this is the right amount for you, and it was perfect. So yeah, from there forward, feel like that was a jumping off point to understanding the world more, and going more into like, okay, how do I do this just on my own day to day? Like, okay, meditation is a huge part of this, just like being present in this reality. And
I love how you're so open about it, because when people think of jiu-jitsu, I guess not technically traditional jiu-jitsu, but like the 10 planet system, it's almost like the running joke of like, oh, everyone's like getting high before this, and they're using it recreationally. But then when you think about wrestlers, you usually think of like straight edge kind of guys,
true, 100%,
you know? So the fact that you're able to come into the space and talk about it so openly and how it has helped you is so fascinating to me, especially when you're diving into something like ayahuasca. So what was your initial introduction to ayahuasca and why you wanted to get started with it?
Yes, so it was to do with wrestling, and I'll just say quickly too, like that it was really scary for me to come to and talk publicly about these things because of you know, being in the wrestling world. 100% not accepted. I don't know what the vibe would be now, but I'm also really grateful to the jiu-jitsu and the MMA community, because I feel like I would see people talk about mushrooms and stuff on interviews, and I'm like, you're allowed to speak about this stuff? Is that okay? You know, I had a dream of, or a wish, I guess, a dream of winning the Olympics and then being able to just finally talk about it in my interviews, which didn't happen, but now, you know, I am able to talk publicly about it. But my first ayahuasca trip, for one, I think it has to do with like the spirit realm, really, and people will say that they have a calling to do something. That's, you know, anything in life. I feel like I was called to do this, called to do that, and they will say ayahuasca will call people, and I felt like I had that calling. I basically had read every sports psych book there was to read as far as trying to make myself better in the wrestling world, and I still felt like I had a mental block, something that was just blocking me, and I didn't know what it was, but I was willing to do anything because this is what I, you know, built my life around and my career around. And I heard about ayahuasca. I don't know how or whatever, but I was like, okay, well, maybe this plant can tell me something I don't know. But even that, I was like, I walk in the doors and I'm like, what have I done? Why am I here? This is such a bad idea. Everyone's wearing white because it's traditional. I'm like, this is so insane. I sit myself in the corner because that was one less person I was gonna have to talk to. There was a wall beside me, and I was like, I don't want to talk to any of these people. I actually want to leave, but I already paid for this. And that first night of ceremony, it went into so many things that they had to do with my intentions. It's very intentional work. You come in with a set of intentions. These are the things that I'm trying to learn or grow about myself, grow within myself. And so many of those markers got hit in ways that I couldn't have imagined, that I was like, okay, there's something here. Like, I'm always willing to try things at least once and get my foot in the door, and then try to really analyze like what's going on here. And then like I felt like I was continually called back just to learn more and grow within myself. And I'm so grateful for, you know, all that medicine work.
So after that first ayahuasca trip, what made you feel like you were going to come back to it? Or was it some time before you did come back to it?
Yeah, that's a great question.
To her,
it was a while.
say.
Yeah, to her. It's a while back. What happened? In that first ceremony, I met a woman that was when I looked around that room when I first walked in, I was like, I'm not talking to nobody. I was like, and she's the weirdest one out of all of them, I can tell. And she ends up being someone I become very, very close with. She took me on as a mentee in the psychedelic space, and also to help along with my path with, she had done a lot of martial arts, my path with MMA. Basically, she's a coach for, in a variety of aspects, like a life coach, I guess, but especially in the plant medicine space, like she's elite in her understanding of these realms, and she taught me so much, and she still continues to. But I started to work with her as a mentor, and I just knew there was more within me to come to understand through these plants in this plant space. And I feel like I just was the tip of the iceberg with going deeper within myself. And really what it came down to, I think, and it's probably one of the things that holds female competitors back the most, is self-worth, and a base of not feeling worthy to be in these spaces, to worthy within themselves, and then like whatever people have in their growing up environment too, which I didn't even have anything that was like no like bad parent situation or anything like that, but I did have this piece that was always missing in my wrestling career, that I didn't feel worthy of being on those stages. Basically, imposter syndrome would be probably the easiest way to say it as well. And I feel like through each ceremony I would dig deeper into the root of what it was, and not just like not like dig deep until I was at the real root of it. And one thing that happens in these ceremonies is you have a physical release. So you will either sweat or get really, really cold sometimes, or vomit, or have to go to the bathroom, which you have like all your faculties usually, for the most part. I've never had any issues. You just walk yourself to the bathroom, if anyone's wondering. But there will be a physical release because we know that these emotions, different things get stored in the body. And that's what I think, is amazing about Amazonian medicines. Almost all of them, they will have some type of physical release. There's also a medicine called kambo, which is a frog secretion. You'll have a purge. There'll be some aspect of purging. And there's all these songs in the Amazon that this is a really respected process of purging. But with that, I feel like there were these things that I was getting rid of over time. And really it was like the old self, that we each have a self that we're trying to evolve out of. And we're doing our best, but that self is also holding on because it's what we know and it's our comfort and it's how we've experienced the world. But I'm pretty sure everybody walking on the planet has like some area that they're like, I know I could be better here. And those ceremonies help me facilitate that person within myself. And I was just like, I know I have more to give on these mats. And I know that there's something that happens when I get into a finals that I was really good at taking second place. I was really good at getting the finals, and then I would even be winning these matches. And it was almost like my subconscious was like, what are we doing here? And throw the match, because I could show you example after example where I do this. And it was like, I'm not willing to like go out like this, basically. I need to figure this out. And there was so much more. Like ayahuasca called me in also to help heal other people, for sure. So then I continued down a path and going to so many ceremonies to learn this medicine and to figure out how to help so many other people. Eventually, right now I'm focused on my athletic career. After, I know I'll come back to this work in some capacity. My undergrad's also in psychology, so it's something I always knew that I would work with people. And so many people in our world today are hurting, and there's so much trauma and just different things that people are working through. And the more that we can get that all to a healed place, the better the whole world will be. So that's something that's coming for me later. But as far as the competitive aspect, it really, I feel like I started processes that were long. It wasn't like instant, it wasn't instantaneous or overnight that I became the person that I felt like I was meant to be. But now sitting here today, I feel I can truly say like I'm her. And it wasn't easy. It was like I had to claw my way to get here where I feel comfortable. Like I said, I was like nervous and uncomfortable joining the boys wrestling team. I think there's a few people that I've known throughout my life, like Adeline Gray is one, Henry Cejudo is one, and I say Tatiana's probably one, where they just like walk into a space and they know they're supposed to be there and they have none of that going on. But I had all that going on for, decades basically. And I feel like finally now at 33, after all this interpersonal work, I'm finally comfortable in every scenario I walk into, like in interviews and just all of it. And to step into the MMA world, I feel that all that work that I did in wrestling, I wish it was for wrestling. I wish it led to me being Olympic champion, but it didn't. But I do feel that I put in all this groundwork that I had to de-layer myself and basically just get the wrecking ball out and go back down to a fundamental level and breaking myself down as a person, and then rebuild myself brick by brick and just decide what I was going to put in each brick. So who do I want to be and who am I? Who am I choosing to be every single day of my life? Like, how do I want to show up in the world? I want to show up confident. I want to show up relaxed. I want to enjoy my life. All these different bits and pieces that through the ceremonies and then all the work that I was doing outside of the ceremonies and the work of wrestling and martial arts in total. Like, I love the quote, everything is the same thing. So whatever I was practicing to do with plant medicine was the same thing that I was learning in relationships, and it was the same thing that I was learning, in the wrestling world and now the MMA world, just in practice. Like you'll end up just receiving the same lessons here, there, and everywhere. But now I feel like all that was for what I'm doing now today. And then what will come later. But as far as MMA goes, like you don't have time or space to not be confident in yourself, especially like MMA. I'm now an entertainer. Wrestling, you're not asked to be an entertainer, and it's almost like frowned upon, I feel like, and it's such a humble sport to like overly celebrate or overly be boisterous. But MMA, it's not only rewarded, it's like a necessity if you want like a good paycheck. So I had to learn to turn myself up to 100 and be the most of myself. And I feel like that all that stuff was me doing that. So I'm really happy and really grateful.
And you're so cerebral and you're so intentional with your mission. How much do you think that your education, going to a big school in Vancouver and kind of getting a different glimpse of what you were living with in Southern California and kind of getting that college experience influenced your interest and curiosity into the alternative medicine world, if at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that those two things are connected, but it was important for me to go to a big school and have that experience. Like I said, there weren't D1 options, which would be a lot of the bigger schools. They were like small Baptist schools. I guess the alternative would probably have brought it in even tighter and made it harder for me to expand into like all these alternative things that are not that easy to find, or at least at the time they weren't, because this is 2009 and beyond, and then up to 2018 was my first ayahuasca ceremony. But yeah, going to Simon Fraser was just an important step for me to just expand as a person, I feel like, and be in an environment bigger than the one I was just coming from, which is my high school, because there was a lot of schools that were smaller than my high school that were options at the time. I will say too, on the plant medicine aspect, a reason I think I'm so deeply called into this space is that I care so much about people now, and I really care about their safety, and there is so much that comes with these circles and these medicines, and that safety needs to be at the forefront. And like I'll say that over and over again, like there's so many ways it can become just not the experience that you're looking for, and that can happen anywhere. That can happen in a gym. Like you sign up with a trainer that just doesn't really know what they're doing, and you get injured, or a coach, or that happens in every aspect of being a human being. But since the plant world is new to America, is new to the US, and it's also blowing up, they're calling it like a psychedelic renaissance, there just needs to be more and more people protecting the people in the space and the traditions and all of it. So I think that has to do, because I'm literally going on this path, like, why am I doing this? And trying to understand it myself. But I think that's a big part of it. Like, I take that part super seriously. And I just recommend that everybody does as well.
So when are you taking Henry Cejudo to an ayahuasca
yes.
trip? And what is it like being
so
mentored
funny.
by him?
Yes, Henry's hilarious. He's like one of the funniest people I've ever met. He's done Bufo, and I always shared about it publicly with Mike Tyson, and I took him on his first mushroom trip. Did I tell you that? Did you know
No.
that? Yes, I took Henry on his very first mushroom trip. It was so cute. We went like on a walk in his neighborhood, and it was like, felt like the first time he was interacting with plants, just like coming really truly to his like inner child, and just saying, like, connecting with the earth. And you see when the mushrooms hit, when someone's like, this tree, so that was great. And then since then, he's very respectful of the work that I do with plant medicine. There's a medicine that I serve called Hape, and he really likes that. But Henry's so funny.
He does like a little bit of everything.
Yeah, he's in the game.
Yeah.
And then I know he's open to ayahuasca. He's mentioned it, but he's just so funny. He's like, send him over. I'm like, send who over? He's like, the people that are gonna do it. I'm like, they don't come over. What are you talking about? He's so funny though, and he's been so helpful my entire career. Like, I don't remember when we met. We both don't exactly know, but he and his family have mentored me through my whole wrestling and now my MMA career. His brother Angel's my wrestling coach, and yeah, they're great.
I mean, that's amazing. You have people like Ronda Rousey in your journey,
yeah.
Henry Cejudo. Is there anyone else that comes to mind that you're like, oh, they were a really pivotal person in this journey?
That's a good question. No, it was really nice meeting Rashad and meeting someone that I feel so aligned with on as far as like the spiritual path and the path to MMA. A great champion, like an absolute savage. So much to teach me on both realms, and then to feel his respect for me is like, oh my God, thank you.
I love Rashad
yeah,
so
I love
much.
Rashad. Yeah, he's great. He's awesome. He's just like a old yogi and just a beast too. So
a beast and someone that turned to ayahuasca to kind of help him figure out like identity after this, you know? Because I know Ronda Rousey now, she has her own like sustainable farm that she kind of does. And I know you're so focused on your career now, but where do you see yourself after all of this? Like, where do you see yourself? Like, what is the perfect Victoria Vortex area for you to just be you? Like, do you see yourself in the combat sports, like teaching all the time, or?
Right, that's such a good question. Now that I've had my knee blown out, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be doing Technique Tuesday the rest of my life. It's a question I can't really answer. I see so many potentials. for one, being an entrepreneur has just always been a part of who I am as a person. Like, so definitely making up my finances in my own way. Which path will end up being the one that I align the most with, I don't know. I'll have to see, but I feel like that's how my life always is. Like, the next best step just reveals itself to me right on time. I don't get to plan that far in advance. It just doesn't feel like my life has ever gone that way. So I've come to accept that, and I just make decisions as they appear. And then I get just an intuitive sense that I know this is the right thing now. And when I stress about things or try to figure them out too early, I feel like I'm just smashing my head into a wall or just getting like anxious and frustrated. And it's just because it's not time yet. So we'll have to see.
So one thing I have to ask you about, because I feel like I'm confused on the topic myself as well. But when you were so focused on your athletic career, you were like, no distractions, no dating. And then now you're in a happy relationship. And I'm just so happy for you because I can feel the energy on you. And I know you guys are going to watch Nogi Worlds. And just what was it like when you were in that time of like being alone, needing your alone time, needing to be financially stable enough to have your own studio or one bedroom, and being an independent woman, an athlete too, though.
Yes.
In this hard time of like, you have to get your own sponsorships and you have to pave your own way. What was that time like for you?
That's a great question. I will say it sucked, like in a lot of different ways. That was that time period of me breaking myself down to a foundation as well. So I can think of different physical locations where I'm just in bed crying, like, what is going on? Trying to support myself financially as a wrestler is hard. I'm consciously choosing to not enter into a romantic relationship, which means I'm consciously choosing to be alone. But I do feel, so like there was a time period where I was in Calgary, Canada, training for Olympic trials in 2021. And I was really there alone, and that was probably my biggest season of growth, personal growth, that you don't get to see right away the fruits of. Like, I feel like those fruits are now, but at the time it was really being intentional and conscious of how I was spending my time, who I was spending it with, and then more than anything, going inward. And I do feel like that will be any person that's like on their personal journey with themselves, and just trying to make the most of themselves. Almost everyone will have a time period where they're called to be alone, because you can't be figuring your own self out and making decisions about who you are and how you are, like, with someone immediately in your space all the time. That's how I've seen it happen for myself and other close friends that are on a similar path. Like, you will go through a time period of being alone, and I'm not saying it's fun, but it makes you stronger, number one, because you're not turning to anyone for the comforts of, just having a cuddle or like anything as far as that type of relationship, or I think you get what I'm saying. Like, you have yourself to rely on in those moments, and you figure out like who you really are. And I think that's where I really learned to meditate in that time period too. But just to even be on my own schedule 100% of the time. Like, when I was living in Calgary, I was living with one of my best friends, Danielle Lapich, Olympian and world silver medalist for Canada. And I'm so grateful she let me move in with her. But spiritually, I felt like I'm supposed to actually be living alone right now and just spending all my time with myself for some reason. So I move out and just scheduling my days like around meditation, reading, all these different things. It ended up being such a season of planting seeds in my life and doing the weeding too, like mental weeding. Rashad says it, that you have to tend to your mental garden, and really restructuring like how I behave internally and externally, how I speak to myself, all those things. I think it's just easier when you don't have a bunch of external influences all the time.
And now that you're in a happy relationship, how have you been able to kind of balance that? Like, how has it given you a different angle in life?
Yes. So a relationship, I feel like, is a romantic relationship, a partnership, a true partnership, is equally as self-developing as doing all that self-development work on your own, because you're confronted daily with a mirror of your own behaviors, your own actions, and the things that you could like easily ignore when you're by yourself. So yes, so with the right person, which I love my boyfriend so much, with him, he is very honest and he tells it like it is and he does not let anything slide. so that, I forgot the question, but with him, like I feel like I'm confronted even more with parts of myself that I would let slide and not realize it because, like I mentioned before, I'm diagnosed ADHD and I don't really like taking on the label because I just don't think it's helpful. But I had traits that for me, by myself, they're okay. Being messy, being disorganized, whatever. But with another person in your space, like, he's like, what the fuck is going on here? And he's like militarized. So he's done 2 tours in Afghan and he was special forces for the British military.
Wow.
Yes. So we're like extra polar opposites in that. Like, I'm like, it's okay. He's like, no, it's not. But those parts of my life that I always wanted to be better about, like just like being on time, keeping spaces well organized. All that type of stuff. One ADHD thing is like you create piles. I don't know if you are like that or you know anyone that's like that, but like the organization system is to have seen where something was and leave it there because you know where it's at in your mind. Instead of like if you gets put away, I don't know where it is anymore. But I'm like, this is not gonna work in the long term or with children or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's like some of the stuff that I'm really grateful for in our relationship that is not easy, but it's also growing me into the person that I know I'm truly meant to be, especially on the business side. Like it's an absolute requirement to have systems and be organized. Even though I think a lot of like business people or like Elon Musk, various people are diagnosed ADHD, but yeah, these traits, like they have to find their systems. And that's one thing that I've grown through in my relationship.
I love that. Yeah. You just asked me, like, I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
Yeah.
I feel like everything you say, I empathize with so well.
That's good.
And like, just the little things, like when you did your dosage, 1.5 grams of mushrooms, like that was my first dosage. Mm-hmm. And I've had a mushroom trip where I was like sitting next to like a Filipina sister next to me. And like, I was just like looking at her. And I would look up at her, and she was becoming me. Like, she was literally becoming me. And I feel like I would have that sensation with you, too, because, like, I literally feel like I see myself in you. And, like, I feel like people who are able to kind of bring up that mirror and then, like, also give that energy of, like, we're literally all connected and all the same. Like, that's, like, what I feel with you.
That's so great.
And it's just so inspiring that someone of your talent and your caliber and your aggression is able to have that spiritual and soft side. I remember your mom after one of your MMA fights, she's just like, I didn't want to tell you beforehand, but we didn't think you had it in you, had that dog in you. So what is it like harnessing that inner savage and it just comes out in total focus mode?
Yes, it's the best. That is so fun. Yeah, my mom said that. I was like, what?
You need to meet your mom.
She's so funny. You have to meet her. She's so funny. She's one of the funniest people I ever met in my life. She's crazy. But yes, she was like, I just didn't think you had it in you to be able to fight someone. Which is it's a valid point because I've never been in a fight my entire life. And when people hear that, they're like, you've never been like in a schoolyard fight or a fist fight? I'm like, no, I just never have been in a fight. But one thing about myself, like I mentioned, is that I love a new stimulus. And this thing that I've never done before, I was like, okay, let's see if I can do it. Like, let's see what I'm really made of. I've tested myself on wrestling mats and judo mats, judo tatami, and now this cage fighting thing. Let's see if we can do it. And I can do it. And I'm like getting so much better right now. We're 3 years into this journey. Over a year was taken away because of my ACL, but I'm getting so much better now. And it's so exciting and it's so fun. And to really be in full expression, there are basically no rules. I mean, there are rules, but as far as other sports go, like everything goes, as far as like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, you know, and being able to express myself in totality, like as a human being, also with the entertainment aspect and, that it's encouraged just to express yourself. That's like the best for me. It's something that it's been not that easy to express myself, I think, my whole life, and growing into it more and more, and now being like, okay, girl, here's a stage for you to do all that on. Like get out there and figure it out. It's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, I feel like that parallels like the release of that divine, dark, animalistic energy that you might release during your ayahuasca ceremonies, but put that into like a fight cage, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Like there is a certain type of energy that, I don't know, or maybe it is just completely sport and like tactical for you.
Yeah.
Because you obviously don't want to be that wipeout that's like, I see red.
No.
I see red. And I'll go out there.
I think everyone's expression is different. I don't really resonate with that exactly, but I think my expression is like high level technique, and I like being everything to look beautiful. Like I like beautiful expressions and explosive technique, and I'm twitchy and I'm fast, and being able to yield that sword skillfully is what I love that I'm growing into every day. Like being fast is cool, but not that cool if you don't know how to use it in a new sport. Like you just are spazzy. So that's me becoming into my full expression athletically in this game. And then the tricks and the traps of MMA, that I feel like that's one thing I wasn't the best at in wrestling, but I understand it now, is like just being able to set traps for people. Wrestling is also very obviously entirely tactile. So it's just a feel that I would set traps without having to overthink them, I guess. But in MMA, it's an entire new aspect of just combat and war, of the shape of the cage, cornering people into the right places, using the right things at the right time, and then striking, actually setting things up. I'm finally getting to that point where I can see things out and set things up and see things as they're properly, versus being in system overwhelm, which I don't know how long it takes everybody, but for me it's taken about I would say like a solid 2 years to get my eyes trained, because wrestling, you're not looking for anything. I can literally wrestle with my eyes closed and do everything about the same. But striking, I need to see. And that was like one of the biggest problems. I'm like, I don't think I'm looking in the right places, So all of those bits and pieces, they're falling into place a little bit more and a little bit more with each passing training session, with each week. And it makes me super excited for the future, because it's like, I already have the skill set that is probably the most coveted in MMA, The capacity to wrestle it's just so valuable. But adding the other skills that will make me a great champion is fun.
And so is there anything lined up in the near future that you're training for?
So yes and no. We're shooting for end of February, and the only thing is coming off my ACL. We're just trying to do the right thing. I don't even know. I'm not 100% cleared, because ACLs can take, unfortunately, I've been told 16 to 18 months. You aim for 9 to 12 months to be back to full sport, but some people just react differently. And I'm just still dealing with swelling and reaction to full training load. So hopefully the end of February, and that'll be great. And then the goal definitely is to get like 3 to 4 fights next year. At minimum, I don't know if I can fight more than that. That would be amazing. And turning pro next year.
I feel like you could easily become pro already. You don't think so?
True. No, that's true. I could have. For me, the smarter thing to do is to feel my way around a cage, get comfortable. Like I said, I've never been in a fist fight at all growing up. I for sure could have gone pro out the gates, but for me, it just wasn't that intelligent. One of the people that I really love following his career and how he set himself up was Israel Adesanya. And one of the things he said is he got all his experience in China first. He got all of his experience, and then he came to the UFC, a fully created product, ready to go. And with having never been in a fight, I was like, let me try to fight first. First of all, I need to see if I even like this. And that was my first commitment to myself. When I stopped wrestling, I was like, okay, MMA has always been in the back of my mind. I genuinely do not know if I'll enjoy fighting another person. So I'm going to commit 1 year to training and give it a real go. And then I'll decide at the end of that year, is this for me, or should I just do something else with my time? So that was part of some of the reasons that I chose amateur. I was like, okay, let me see if I actually like getting into a cage and fighting another person before committing to a professional career.
Did you have a dopamine drop after?
Oh my gosh.
Was it like tears? What happened?
So the first 3 fights, no. They were in tournament settings though. So there was just like a lot going on, and it was less all eyes on you. So I didn't have that. There were 2 world championships. The first was in Amsterdam, and the second was in, where was that IMF tournament? Serbia. And for whatever reason, it didn't feel the same as when I had my last fight, which was against one girl in a cage on the Fury Fighting Championships. And I didn't know that adrenaline felt that way. Like, I did not know what was going on. I woke up in the morning and I was like buzzing, but then also tired and also emotional and like feeling like I need to be doing something. I've never had that in wrestling, and I didn't have that in those first 3 fights. So, and then it just like kept going. Like later in the day, we're warming up, I feel good, then I feel emotional, then I feel tired, then I'm like walking out to the walkout, I'm like, I feel like I could go to sleep right now. I could fall asleep right now. All that was like, what is this? And then after, did I have a dump after? I don't know if I really had an like adrenaline dump necessarily, but all that was super fun because I hadn't had the experience yet. And that's like, I just want to have every experience in life that I can, really.
And I know we're coming up on time because she's going to get to Nogi World soon, but I am curious. I know you're not consider yourself a Jiu Jitsu star, but you're so in our community. I'm sure you were like having your popcorn when we had like the 80cc versus CJI drama.
Yes, I was like, what is going on?
So what is your take as an outsider kind of looking at that drama? You know, kind of for the fight for greater fighter pay.
Yes, from my experience, like just from my perspective, it's amazing. Like all of this talk and all this drama in the jiu-jitsu world is the best thing you could have for the sport. Competition, breeds expansion. And so to have these two organizations, seeing everything Craig did is so sick. Like I love to see it. I love to see people paving their own way, not only for themselves, but an entire community behind them. And there should be more than one organization, in my opinion, more than one group of people doing something, because it makes it better for everybody in the end. You have more options and more choices and more room for expression. Like the one place is not the right place for everyone all the time, So I like that he opened up another space for high level Nogi athletes to compete. And then obviously the paycheck is just like an entirely mind-blowing thing to see. And it's completely normal in all other high level sports to be paid properly for what you're doing. And jiu-jitsu, I will say, is so insane to me, maybe even more than MMA, but over any other sport, that people are showing up to weekend tournaments and letting their knees get shredded. I'm like, this is crazy. And not getting paid properly. Yes, the dedication and just the willingness. There are really high risks involved in this sport in particular. So for those guys to get, a $10,001 show bonus and to have something to look towards, fighter pay is super important, and just that everything is kind of spread a bit more evenly.
And if you were to see yourself 5 years from now, where do you see yourself?
UFC champion, because I'll have made a 105-pound weight division. I'll have defended the belt a few times and then made my exit. And there is a chance I would go to the WWE, because it's something I'm like, what is going on over there? And the entertainment aspect and the showmanship, all of that stuff looks really fun. There's a chance that I would do that, but I'll have kids and I'll have a family.
Well, a wide spectrum of places that we could see, WWE, UFC, and you have the guide of Ronda Rousey too, because she's done a little bit of everything as well. But Victoria, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was great. Thank you.
We're going to have to do this again.
Yeah, that was fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Victoria Vortex. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. Seriously,
Thank you.
It was amazing.
Yay.
If you enjoyed that interview, be sure to check out this one.